North America is home to some of the biggest cattle operations on Earth. In this video, we look at the top 5 ranches by herd size, operations that run tens of thousands of cattle and manage hundreds of thousands of acres. From Canada's largest working ranch to the biggest cow-calf operation in the United States, and finally, the massive Mexican feedlot that leads the continent, these ranches are major forces in North America's beef supply. Let's break down the top 5 giants.
Our next stop is almost as far from the U.S. mainland as you can get while still staying under the American flag, the big island of Hawaii. Parker Ranch, based around the town of Waimea, is one of the oldest and historically largest ranches in the United States. Today, Parker Ranch operates on approximately 130,000 acres of rangeland and typically runs between 9,000 and 15,000 mother cows, depending on conditions. When calves are on the ground, that can mean around 30,000 cattle on the ranch at a given time. Historically, the numbers were even bigger. In the mid-20th century, Parker Ranch maintained 30,000 to 35,000 head of Hereford cattle, making it the second largest ranch by cattle count under the American flag. The ranch's roots go back to 1847, when John Palmer Parker, an American sailor, married into Hawaiian royalty and started helping King Kamehameha I deal with a growing problem: wild cattle. These animals had been introduced as gifts by Captain George Vancouver and allowed to multiply freely, creating both a nuisance and an opportunity. Parker, along with local Hawaiian cowboys, called paniolos, developed ways to rope, manage, and eventually ranch these cattle. Hawaiian paniola culture is proud and distinct. They learned roping and horsemanship techniques from Mexican vaqueros in the 1830s, which means cowboy traditions in Hawaii actually predate many mainland cowboy customs. By the 1930s, under manager Alfred Carter, Parker Ranch had expanded to more than 500,000 acres and those tens of thousands of cattle. It became a key supplier of beef to the U.S. military, especially during World War II and afterward. The last family heir, Richard Smart, was both a ranch owner and an entertainer. When he died in 1992, he placed the ranch in trust for several local charities and community institutions. Today, Parker Ranch remains a working cattle ranch adapting to the realities of modern markets. The herd has shifted from the classic white-faced Herefords to Angus cross cattle, aimed at delivering better beef quality. Because Hawaii lacks large feedlots, Parker Ranch ships about 5,000 weaned calves each year to the U.S. mainland for finishing. That process involves trucking, ocean shipping, and rail, a complex logistical chain compared to a traditional cattle drive. On the pastures, Parker Ranch embraces rotational grazing and increasingly regenerative methods suitable for the island's mix of wet and dry zones. Cattle handling is largely done on horseback in rugged mountainous terrain, with off-road vehicles assisting where the land allows. The ranch has diversified into branded local beef through its Paniolo beef label and has ventured into renewable energy, leasing portions of its land for wind power projects. Culturally, Parker Ranch serves as a guardian of Paniolo heritage. The Paniolo Heritage Center and ranch museums preserve artifacts and stories, while rodeos and community events keep cowboy traditions very much alive. Parker Ranch proves that cowboy country can exist in lush, volcanic landscapes surrounded by the Pacific Ocean.
Now we head north to Canada, to the rolling grasslands of British Columbia's interior. There we find Douglas Lake Cattle Company, better known as Douglas Lake Ranch, the largest working cattle ranch in Canada and one of the largest in North America by land area and herd. Located roughly 35 miles southeast of Kamloops, Douglas Lake Ranch typically has 18,000 to 20,000 head of cattle on its ranges at peak season. Estimates of total land control, including deeded and leased ground, can exceed 500,000 acres, placing it among the continent's giants. The ranch was founded in 1886 during a period of rapid cattle expansion in Western Canada. By the early 1900s, Douglas Lake Ranch had grown to more than 110,000 acres and was second only to the famous Gang Ranch in size. Over the decades, it emerged as the preeminent ranch in Canada, drawing visits from figures such as the Duke of Edinburgh, who came to hunt and ride on the property. Today, Douglas Lake Ranch is owned by businessman Stan Kroenke, who also owns the W.T. Wagoner Ranch in Texas, linking two huge ranching operations under the same ownership. Beyond cattle, the ranch is famous for its scenic lakes and grasslands, and it allows limited tourism, especially for trophy fishing on private lakes like Douglas Lake itself. Despite the immense scale, the ranch operates with the relatively small crew, around 18 to 20 full-time cowboys. These hands manage the large herd primarily on horseback, supported by careful planning and teamwork. Each cowboy typically keeps a string of about a dozen horses, rotating them through different jobs and workloads across the season. In summer, cattle graze on native bunchgrass ranges, including extensive areas of crown, public land, under grazing leases. In winter, the animals are moved down to lower ranch-owned pastures. One of the ranch's key advantages is the sheer amount of contiguous grazing land it controls, which allows cattle to graze much of the year and reduces the need for intensive winter feeding. Rangeland management is critical. Stocking rates are carefully monitored to protect fragile native grasses. The ranch also focuses on watershed health, managing riparian zones along creeks and around lakes to control erosion and protect water quality. Tradition still dominates the daily work. Cowboys do most tasks from the saddle, and the overall feel is that of an old-time big outfit. At the same time, Douglas Lake integrates modern veterinary care and occasionally uses ATVs for tasks like fence work or feeding. The combination of large-scale, strong range management, and relatively low-cost operations has earned Douglas Lake Ranch a reputation for producing high-quality cattle efficiently, an example of sustainable ranching at a truly large scale. Back in South Texas, we arrive at one of the most iconic names in global ranching, King Ranch. With about 825,000 acres under its brand, King Ranch is larger than the state of Rhode Island and stands as one of the biggest ranches in the United States, both in terms of land and cattle. Its herd today numbers around 35,000 head, including the ranch's famous Santa Gertrudis cattle. The ranch's headquarters includes the historic 1915 main house, a symbol of its long-standing role in American ranching history. Founded in 1853 by Captain Richard King, an Irish-descended riverboat captain, King Ranch began with a relatively small Spanish land grant in what was known as the Wild Horse Desert of South Texas. Over the late 19th century, the ranch expanded by acquiring neighboring ranchos, gradually building a vast empire. King and his successors, particularly the Clayburgh family, helped shape American cattle ranching. One of their biggest contributions was the development of the Santa Gertrudis breed in the 1920s. By crossing Brahman cattle with shorthorns, the ranch created a red, heat-tolerant breed that thrived in South Texas's harsh climate. Santa Gertrudis later became the first official beef cattle breed developed in the United States. In the days of long trails, King Ranch ran huge cattle drives northward, and its Running W brand became legendary up and down the trail routes. Another turning point came in the 1930s, when oil was discovered on King Ranch lands, adding a major new income stream that continues today. Modern King Ranch is a diversified agribusiness. Its cattle operation stretches across four main divisions: Santa Gertrudis, Laurelis, Encino, and Norias, spread over multiple counties. The ranch also grows crops such as cotton, grain, sugarcane, and citrus oranges, and participates in various forms of hunting and tourism. To manage forage on semi-arid rangeland, King Ranch uses rotational grazing and aggressive brush control, targeting species like mesquite and huasach that can quickly take over pastures. Cowboys still ride some of the best quarter horses in the business, many from King Ranch's own storied breeding program, but they also rely on pickup trucks and GPS to check on water points, fences, and cattle herds. King Ranch has long been a leader in scientific breeding and continues to invest in genetics research to improve cattle traits like fertility, carcass quality, and heat tolerance. Visitors can tour the ranch's museum and historic buildings, learning why King Ranch is often called the birthplace of American ranching. After nearly 170 years, it remains a living legend, balancing deep heritage with cutting-edge agriculture. Our second largest herd takes us once again to Florida. Deseret Ranch, located in central Florida, east of Orlando, is often described as the largest single-site cow-calf ranch in the United States. It spans about 295,000 acres of flat woods, improved pasture, and wetlands, and keeps a massive breeding herd of roughly 42,500 to 44,000 cows. Each year, over 40,000 calves are born here, making the operation one of North America's largest cattle producers by head count. Deseret Ranch is owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and managed through its Ag Reserves arm. The ranch was established in 1950 on cut-over timberland and swampy ground. Over time, 14 separate parcels were assembled and improved, turning what was once low-value land into a major center of cattle production. The name Deseret comes from a term in early Mormon history meaning honeybee, symbolizing industry and cooperation. Appropriately, the ranch's brand is a beehive, signaling the values behind the operation. Over the decades, Deseret invested heavily in improved pasture species suited to Florida's warm, humid climate. It also introduced Brahman-influenced cattle that could handle heat, insects, and humidity while still performing well. The ranch diversified its land use, adding citrus with more than 1,500 acres of orange groves, timber production, sod, and other crops. Today, Deseret is a highly integrated agribusiness model. The heart of the operation is the cow-calf program. Calves are weaned and shipped to Western feedlots for finishing. To manage the huge landscape, cowboys use a mix of horses, ATVs, and occasionally helicopters to locate, gather, and move cattle. Water management is a huge issue in Florida, and Deseret has extensive systems of irrigation and drainage canals to handle heavy rains while protecting pastures and ecosystems. Environmental stewardship is central to the ranch's identity. Large areas of wetlands and wildlife habitat are conserved, and rotational grazing is used to maintain healthy, resilient grasslands. Performance data is collected and analyzed to improve breeding decisions, emphasizing traits like fertility, growth, and environmental fit. With nearly 300,000 acres under management, Deseret Ranch also acts as a green buffer against rapid urban sprawl in the Orlando region, a massive working landscape surrounded by growing cities and suburbs. At the very top of the list, by a huge margin, is Sucarne's Lucero Ranch in Durango, Mexico. This operation looks very different from the classic image of an open-range ranch. Officially known as Agropark Integradora Sucarne Lucero, it is a gigantic feedlot and processing complex, often cited as the largest feedlot facility in the world. Lucero Ranch is located in Tlahualilo, Durango, on roughly 474 hectares, about 1,170 acres of land. Despite that relatively compact footprint compared to the open ranches we've seen, its scale in terms of cattle is astonishing. The feedlot has the capacity to hold up to 250,000 animals at one time and feeds around 800,000 head per year. As part of the larger Sucarne Group, owned by Jesus Vizcarra's Grupo V's, this site helps the company process about 1.3 million head of cattle annually. Historically, Mexico was home to enormous haciendas, like the Luis Terrazas Ranch in the 19th century, which is said to have run around 1 million cattle at its peak. Agrarian reforms eventually broke up many of those old estates. Lucero Ranch, built in 2015 to 2016 with major investment and government support, represents a modern evolution of large-scale cattle production in Mexico, geared toward export markets and industrial efficiency. One of the conditions tied to that support was that the facility maintained capacity for 250,000 head by 2017, which pushed Sucarne to build a highly sophisticated operation. Lucero includes its own feed mill capable of producing roughly 130 tons of feed per hour, turning grains and other ingredients into balanced rations. The operation even processes manure into organic fertilizer, closing part of the nutrient cycle and adding another revenue stream. Environmental management and biosecurity are major priorities. At this scale, disease prevention and waste handling must be tightly controlled, so Lucero uses advanced systems to monitor animal health, manage effluent, and keep operations within strict regulatory standards. Around 60% of the beef produced from Lucero's cattle is destined for export, tying this single site directly into global supply chains. While it doesn't fit the classic romantic image of cowboys on horseback trailing cattle across open plains, Lucero Ranch is a key part of how modern beef reaches consumers, and it stands as the largest cattle feeding operation in North America by head capacity.